MacVoices is supported by Smile, the makers of world-class software like Text Expander. Find out about all their great utilities at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I'm really pleased to have Mr. Steve Sande on this time. Steve and I have known each other we just compared notes, and it's been years.
It is in the double digits.
Yes, it is in the double digits, which is just hard to believe. I've known Steve through a whole bunch of different projects. This time he's here to talk about, though, his latest one, his new podcast, Tangible Tech. I want to make sure I get it right, Tangible Tech. Steve, welcome. It's great to see you.
It's wonderful to be here, Chuck. And it's been way too long. I'm going to have to invite you onto my podcast, and that way we'll be able to.
Yeah. It's tough. Time slips by. You get different things. I've had a lot of events going recently, which of course that gives you a lot of content. And then you start trying to pick up the pieces, say, yeah, I need to talk to this person about that. And so that's what we're doing here. But when you let me know that you had started yet another podcast, it's like, really? Okay, good. But why?
Well, it's all because of I'm one of those people who gets easily bored. I guess that's the way to put it. And, as I always looked through my career, from the time I got out of college until now, it's about every 5 years I would kind of find some way not to change jobs, but maybe kind of change the focus of what I was working on. So I'm one of those people who just kind of gets bored, And I decided that, talking about Apple, and I've been writing about Apple literally since 1986. I mean, if you take a look at the bulletin board systems that I ran back in, starting in 1986, I've been writing about Apple online for a long, long time. And I love Apple. I think next week when they announce their earnings, I think we're going to see yet another knock it out of the park. I just think, the company is really doing a lot of good things. Sometimes they don't do things all that brilliantly, but, for the most part, everybody loves that company. But I'm one of those people, like I said, I get kind of bored, and I love technology and science in general. That's the reason when I got out of high school, I said, I'm going to become an engineer. I want to really know this stuff. I want to I have a cat talking here, but I really just have always had this love of technology. And if you take a look at the world right now, there is so much going on that's outside of our narrow focus of Apple that I think a lot of people just don't hear about, or don't really get that the coverage or the comments, or they don't know where to look for a lot of this. So what I decided, and it was kind of funny because when we first talked about getting on the show, I was running a website called Drone World Today. And Drone World Today was going to be kind of like a sister site to Apple World Today. I'm doing some commercial drone work, and I thought, yeah, that'd be a great way to do it. But then I realized belatedly, after I actually went ahead and started the site, that there were already a lot of drone-oriented websites, and it was just going to be another voice in the crowd out there. So I started thinking about it, and I thought, I'm still running Apple World Today. I love that site. I love being able to do things. I also do writing for the Rocket Yard, which is OWC's website. But I wanted to be able to just let people know about what's going on out there that doesn't have to do with Apple. So that's where Tangible Tech came in. And the idea of tangible tech, tangible means something that you can kind of put your hands on, get your hands around, get your brain around it. And that was the idea behind the podcast, is really, let's talk about things that maybe right next to you, and maybe something you do every day, and you don't know about the technology behind them. So, I've got a list of topics that I want to cover. I've already I think we just had our 5th episode, talked about a lot of interesting little stories. But for instance, one thing that I thought of as a topic is light rail systems. Now, I know that sounds bizarre, but there is a tremendous amount of technology tied into getting people from point A to point B. And, I started thinking about it. One of the reasons I went into engineering, believe it or not, was I wanted to be a transportation engineer at one point in my life. And then I found out when I was in college that there were no jobs in that field. So I quickly went, but nowadays, things have changed quite a bit, since the 1970s, way back in that period. Anyway, getting into that, talk to people about how these modern light rail systems got started. That's just going to be one topic. My wife, of course, I've mentioned her many times on your various podcasts, but she was in the rocket launching business for many, many years. And both of us were still enthralled with the business. She got to see a lot of launches. She's actually one of the few people I've ever met in my life who actually got to see one of the moon launches. And she got to see a bunch of Titan launches. She, because she was working on that program, she was actually on the launch team for the Cassini probe that went out to Saturn. So we love launches. And that's one of those things that, I want to talk about quite a bit, is kind of explain some of the stuff that some of the modern companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, there are some other smaller companies that I'm sure people haven't even heard of, but talk about what they're doing and how they're all really trying to reduce the cost of getting a pound of payload up into orbit and beyond. So, we see what SpaceX does, and, it's just absolutely amazing how they do it. I think being able to explain to people some of the technology behind that in terms that people will understand is really what things like tangible tech is about. I want to be able to do that. So we're up to our 5th episode. I mentioned to you before we got on the air here that I decided to make this entire thing kind of a fun experiment. So, and we were also talking about people asking you, here's an idea I have for a podcast. How do I go about doing it? And I'm going to go on record as saying that, and right now it's kind of controversial, I really like Anchor.fm. They are a podcasting company that says, we want to get you on the air. And very simple to use. I got to admit, if you end up using either an iPhone or an iPad to do the recording, make sure that your face is like planted in that talking thing. If you're using their app to record on an iPhone, pretend you're talking on the phone, because that's where you're going to get the best possible sound. Their editing tools are a little bit flaky. I actually do my editing offline, but I like the platform. I love the fact that I'm now published on 11 different podcast networks. And, previously when I was using Libsyn, it was just Apple. It was kind of the, Apple's podcast environment was where I was. Now I'm on Spotify, I'm on Google, I'm on, you name it, we're out there. And they keep adding networks all the time. So, and it's free. That's another thing. It's absolutely free to use. Does that come with a cost? Yeah, they own your your butt there, but
wait a minute. I think you better explain that part.
Well, really, what it's all about. Why is my phone ringing? Oh, it's a spam call. How nice. No, really, they do own the content. And at this point, there really is, well, unless you happen to have some sort of deal that you're doing with, a sponsor or something like that, there's really no way to monetize one of the podcasts. Their plan is, and I think this is part of their long-term business plan, is that if they see a podcast that just has a tremendous number of people listening to it every week, then they'll work with that person to make it worth their while to keep it on the Anchor network and this other set of networks out there. So, we talked about podcasts. You and I both love the idea of podcasting. We've been podcasting. I mean, you are the consummate podcaster. Whenever somebody asks about podcasting, I said, "You want to hear what a good podcast is all about? Go out, take a look at MacVoices. Look at Mac Notables. Go out, look at this world, and you're going to see what it's all about." Mm-hmm. But for people who are just wanting to get started, I think Anchor is a wonderful way to do it. And I just decided, what the heck? I don't need additional cost in my life. So that's what I'm using. And by gosh, I'm sticking with it.
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. That's very nice. And it's interesting. I've looked into Anchor, especially because of some recent changes in my life. Suddenly become very aware of who owns what and who has what rights. And so while I seriously doubt that anybody's going to care about MacVoices in, X number of years after a given episode goes live, at the same time, you're not anxious to see maybe it leveraged somewhere else that you don't have control over. So
exactly,
that's one of those things you have to balance out. The old saying, if you're not the customer, you're the product. So,
precisely,
just keep that in mind.
And you think about somebody like, strangely enough, the man who designed the logo for Apple World Today, Aaron Mahnke, who knew that he was going to have the Lore podcast that would become wildly successful, not only as a podcast, but it's now a TV series, on streaming TV. If he was using or had used initially something like Anchor, who knows what would have happened? He wouldn't have been able to monetize, who knows what would have gone on, or he would have monetized and they would have said, wait, we want our cut. So
yeah, a lot of things you have to think about, but at the same time, if you're just getting started, and you're not quite sure, by all means, you can always do a relaunch, a rebrand. You can move over and just say, okay, the first 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever episodes are just not available anymore, or they're available, over there, but over here's where the new stuff is going. So, lots of options here. It's the most important, I think, thing to do is get people to start. Just
do it.
Just do it. Yep, just do it.
Yeah, Nike, they've got that trademark on that, so we're going to have to acknowledge that, but just do it.
Yeah, let's change that and let's just get started. Just start. There you go. Just start. That's even better.
Just start. Yeah, and it's so something like Anchor really makes it easy. They honestly just bring people step by step through the process. Here's how you record. Here's how you edit. Here's how you can put in little pieces of music, if you want to do that. Extremely easy. In fact, I think in my case, the fact that it was so easy, I kept thinking, there's something wrong here. I'm missing something, and I wasn't. And I've used. Well, I actually used to run a podcast hosting service way back, 2004 through. I think I finally gave up in like 2010, somewhere around there, because it was a lot of work, and also was requiring a lot of server space, and I just kind of made a business decision, but they make it so incredibly easy. So, But wait a second. This isn't an advertisement for Anchor.
Well, no, but
Let's talk about tangible tech.
yeah, but I do feel compelled just to point out one more thing, and that is that both of us, when we got into podcasting, it was very early days, and we developed our own workflows. Now, if you decide you want to start a podcast, there are a number of different places, Anchor being one of the most recent, that you can go and, like you say, they walk you through the steps. This is how you do it on our platform. Yeah. And if you do it on their platform, those are the steps you follow and you're up and running. You and I were having to figure out, the recording, the editing, the hosting, the websites, the embedding in the websites, bandwidth. You can just go on and on and on. Yeah. And all of that now is taken care of for you. So if you're thinking about it, whether it's Anchor or whether it's one of the other solutions out there, by all means, do your research, figure out what's best for you, and get started.
Yeah, and kind of getting back to the thrust of tangible tech is, I really wanted to enjoy podcasting again. I was doing a daily podcast for Apple World Today that was called, basically it was our AWT news update. Every day I would go out and I'd get some stories that we hadn't actually run or published on the website that talked about, of course, Apple, the world of Apple, what was going on there. And it became a chore. It really did, because every day I had to go in, and Dennis is an amazing person. He writes so many posts every day on Apple World Today. I'm not as productive as he is. Of course, I do a lot behind the scenes, to keep the site running. But, so I was constantly searching for things. And sometimes it was like, okay, let's talk about this Apple store in the middle of nowhere that nobody has ever gone to, and it's actually closing down. That'll be my story. So that's what got me started thinking about tangible tech is, once again, I wanted to look at the world of technology and science rather than this narrow focus. And I wanted to have fun doing it. So I'm not doing it on any particular schedule. It's just whenever I, get a pile of good stories that are really engaging, or if I do a bunch of research on one topic, that's been the other thing. I'll go out and look at, do a focus on one topic instead of having maybe 6 or 7 interesting stories that people may not know about. So anyway, so that brings us to go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Well, I want to make a point about that, and this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. That in the early days, podcasting was supposed to be just what you're talking about. You release when it suits you, when you have something to say. And along the way, it's gotten not perverted, but it's been taken over by the marketing people. And okay, so you've got to release. This is on this day and this time, and you got to do it constantly. And some people can do that because there's a lot of good content out there, but it takes time, and it almost has to be part of your job, or you're not going to be able to do it. So what happens is that those podcasts end up, the ones that kill me, and this is a perfect example, they'll start up by saying, well, nothing much happened this week. And then an hour later, they're still talking. Yeah. And, okay, so if nothing happened, then either don't publish a show or come on and say, hey, not much happened this week. I got a new shirt and I'll see you next week. And so I really love
new underwear.
Yeah, well, we didn't need to go there, Steve. But I love the fact that you're going back to sort of the purest form, where if you have something to say, you'll say it. Otherwise, you're not going to clutter up people's feeds with just something to say. Yes, I published.
Yeah, and that's really the thing I want to be able to do is if there isn't much in a particular week that's happened in the world of science and technology, which is not going to happen. I mean, that's kind of getting into the other part of tangible tech, which is the website, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But if there's not a lot going on in a particular topic or an area or little stories going on there, I will just go out and I'll find something that, really fascinates the heck out of me, and I'll research the heck out of it. That's one of those things that I've always liked doing as well. I kind of think it That's why I went from being an engineer and turned into a writer. I, I love going out and learning about things instead of just kind of asking the question, gee, I wonder how they do that. I like to be able to say, well, this is how they do it. Not only that, I can explain it to people. And I want to do that in a way that really allows people to say, wow, I didn't know that. That's cool. I'm going to tell my friends about that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and with you have so many interests, I know, because we've had discussions on all kind of topics, and I love the
yes, we
fact.
have.
Well, and I love the fact that you found a home and a way to share some of that enthusiasm, and also to enlighten people. Because you're right, you don't approach too many things casually. You do a deep dive on just about everything, and so this gives you an outlet for that.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you. Well, in fact, I definitely want to do a complete episode here pretty quickly. I've got a guy locally who actually runs a DJI store. Now, DJI is the drone company. If you're in the business, they are the drone company, for better or worse. And I also, like you said, I'm one of those people. I don't do, yeah, I do some things half-assed, but anyway, I like to. You don't want to talk about that, but anyway, what I like to do is, really get into a topic. And with drones, I was actually, I've been flying them since they actually started up. Early on, Parrot made this AR drone, and I got saw one of those. Actually, did video of it at, I think it was like the 2010 MacWorld Expo, and I was enthralled. I thought this thing is really cool, even though it could only fly for like 5 minutes, and it was best if you flew it inside because it didn't have all that much range. But things kept improving. Things got better. Things got better. And I finally said, I'd like to do that as kind of a part-time job, doing some of the photography and videography and things like that. So I'm thinking about doing that, becoming commercial. Oh, all of a sudden, I need to get an FAA license. And, that kind of brings you down that path. And that, once again, got me thoroughly immersed in the world of aircraft. And I've been an airplane fan since I was a kid. I have honestly read Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine since the 1960s. And I've seen how the business has changed. I love talking about aircraft. I love talking about the direction that industry is going. So people are going to hear about that. Healthcare. We've seen changes in healthcare. You've seen it. I want to be able to talk about that. Now, you'll notice I'm wearing my little AirPods here, and that's, of course, just because I like the fact that I can use them for doing this type of thing. But I found out last year that my hearing is really going to heck. So later on this year, I'm going to have a pair of hearing aids. And I want to talk about why the hell those things are as expensive as they are. It's ridiculous. Now, there's a lot of technology that's built into these things nowadays, but I'm not actually going to get them until October. But that's going to be a topic. Anything and everything in this world of technology and science can be something that I will go in and research and then explain to people in a non-condescending way that they can understand. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, yeah, the non-condescending part, I really, especially respect that, but it's too bad that we even have to say that. It should be just you recognize. I mean, listen, if you start talking to me about the engine in my car, well, you better be condescending because I have no idea. I mean, especially the way the cars have gone since we were kids. And I was never a gearhead to start with, so at least not of that kind. And so, yeah, okay, whatever you tell me needs to be done needs to be done. So please bring it down to my level.
Yeah.
And then if people want to, especially with you and with Apple World today and the channels of communication, they can follow up with you if they have advanced questions or want to discuss it on a deeper level. But
Exactly.
I think this has the potential to be very valuable to a lot of people, both as a general interest thing, but also as a bit of a good practical knowledge, as everything we do involves tech and it has tech embedded in it or surrounding it or delivered by
Yeah.
tech or the banking systems, the investment systems. You just can just swing a dead
Yeah.
cat and you'll hit tech in some place. So
Well, your example of cars, that's one thing I want to talk about, or some of the, I last year we bought a 2017 Honda CRV. And we had CRVs for eons, I think ever since the model came out. And this one, it was like, if this was the technology level in the 2007, I can't even raise my hand up high enough to talk about the level of technology that's in there. That car, this Honda sensing system that they've built in, and it's one of many that are out there. Just about every car manufacturer has something like this, but it's just absolutely amazing being able to be on a road or freeway or something like that, and you've got this lane keeper assist. If you happen to nod off or get bored or something like that, and your attention wanders and you end up going off, it's guiding the car back in. And I actually played with it early on. I think it was about the first month we had the car. We were down on a curvy, windy, up and down, hilly 2-lane road between Colorado Springs and I think it was trying to remember Canyon City, Colorado. But anyway, we were driving down this road, and I said, I've got to try this out. So I got lane keeper assist on there, and I'm driving along, and I would just take my hands off of the steering wheel. I wasn't going to let it drive itself, but I just did this. And it's following the curves and it's going around. Cars ahead of me slow down because somebody's turning off. The car brakes, they accelerate away. The car accelerates up to the speed again. And I was just absolutely floored by that, going, this is the, almost the self-driving car I want. So, I plan on doing an episode on these not really self-driving car systems and what's involved with them, and the sensors that are built into these cars are just amazing. And you see it, I got to tell you about this. Since it's Shark Week, I already had my own Shark Week on Tangible Tech. One thing that you've probably noticed is that most cars nowadays, when we were growing up, you had the telescoping antenna on the car. And then about 10 years ago, they went to the kind of the stubby, short, usually black. You could tell there was a wire wrapped around this thing that was covered with shrink wrap or something, but it went to that. Now everybody has shark fins on their cars, and they're this little antenna. And so I already did an episode where I went into a deep dive on shark fins. Who makes them? Why are they on cars as opposed to the old aerials? And I'll leave it to people to go out and listen to that episode, which I think was episode 2, to find out why the industry is going that way.
Okay, I'm hooked right there. You got me. You got me. Let's make sure we get to the website. Not just because there's a website, but also, this. You started mentioning this on Apple World today, and then now you've opened up your very own website for Tangible Tech.
Well, I have to hand it to my partner on when we do AWT TV, a guy by the name of Marty Edwards. Now, Marty, I've known for about 2 years now, and he's not a techie, but he is. He's one of those people like us, who just loves digging into things. Actually, by career, he's a pastor I mean, he's a preacher, that's what he does for a living. He runs a church, but he's also a gamer. He loves playing games. He just has a fascination with a lot of things. And, he and I kind of bounced a lot of this stuff, off of each other. Well, at one point, and he lives in rural Kentucky. He said, and I can't do his accent, so I won't even try. But he says, Steve, you ought to consider, when I told him about the Tangible Tech podcast, he says, you ought to do a website and, just throw the stuff out there because there's so much going on that, you don't get to write about on Apple World today. Well, what I kind of realized is that I wouldn't have the time to sit down and write a detailed article about everything. So what I've decided to do is I kind of looked at the Loop Insight model. If you take a look at Jim Dalrymple's wonderful, wonderful website, I used that as really kind of the model. In many cases, what you're going to see is a headline, of course, a title for that particular post. I've got a little arrow icon that I use to show that it's, you can click on that to go to the original article for more details. But if you're just one of those people who says, well, this is interesting, I learned enough right here just looking at this article, you've got the entire thing in one paragraph. You've got where the source was, you have a quote from it. Hopefully that's going to whet your interest and you're going to go out to the original site. And then you have maybe a maximum of 2 lines, maybe 2 sentences from me explaining why this is such a cool story. And that's what the website is all about. We just went live yesterday. I welcome people to come out and take a look at it. It's tangibletech.net. And that will also be the first place that the Tangible Tech podcast will always be implanted, as I like to put it. I don't like the term embed. I like we implanted it inside the post there. But it's I designed it. Also, I was getting too many websites nowadays. You've got a lot of ads, a lot of things. There's no ads on this. Eventually, I hope we can get sponsors, but there are no ads on it. It's designed from the bottom line for speed. It's a website that is responsive, which means you can look at it on a smartphone, you can look at it on a tablet, you can look at it on a big honking screen on your iMac Pro. It's going to look good on any one of those, and it's going to load like that.
I like the idea. Once again, I mean, you are curating as well as creating and putting it both on the same site. And so an article that maybe piques your interest, you're going to put there. Who knows? There might be an episode about it, that week or 2 weeks from now or 3 after you've done some research. But,
Exactly.
It will give folks a sense of the kind of things that Tangible Tech will deliver. And I'm going to have to add it to my list of news sources and podcasts because I just really like this whole idea that you've come up with.
Well, hit the RSS feed and subscribe to that sucker.
You can count on it. Okay, after this show, there will be at least one new subscriber. It will be me. I can't speak for the audience, but I would encourage everybody definitely go and check this out. And if you aren't familiar with Steve, just Google him and you'll see what all he's been up to because over the years he's been up to a lot. Most recently, Apple World Today. But now this new thing. But this doesn't mean you're stepping away from Apple World Today. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah, not at all. Like I said, I still write long form reviews on there. In fact, I've got so much to review right now; it's terrifying. My wife honestly has made the comment a bunch of times. We ought to take a hand grenade and throw it into your office. Because there is so much that I have reviewed in the past and will be reviewing in the future. And I I do dumps of this stuff every once in a while. One of our local Mac user groups is a group by the name of Macintech. They've been around, since I was a kid. And they're, every year I try to get a hold of Andy Suhaka, who's their, I won't say their president. She's kind of the person who gets, because she isn't the president of the group. But anyway, she's the person who is the contact. She gets a lot of the meetings put together. But every year I give her a big box and I say, bring these to your Christmas meeting and hand out cases by the dozens and keyboards. Please get rid of this stuff. So, one other thing I was going to bring up, you had mentioned, feedback. One thing that I really love about the Anchor.fm system, the Anchor.fm product out there, is that there are apps for iOS, both the, I guess it's one app and it runs on iPad and iPhone, but that's not important. Anyway, their apps allow you as a listener, if you subscribe to a particular podcast, you can leave voice response. You can also, if I happen to be Steve Sande and I want to have Chuck Joyner on my thing, I can set it up so that you can call me using their app. And we do a nice non-video, but we do a nice audio podcast, and your voice comes in just beautifully. So another thing about that, like I said, with the feedback, it's like a call-in. I think each listener has up to 60 seconds that they can say, hey, I really loved this last podcast about, robotic cats or something like that. I say that because there's, one of my two cats is wandering around. The other one scraped me yesterday. Oh. We took him to the vet, and he didn't want to go. So anyway, I'm in pain. No, I'm not. So anyway, off subject. That's one thing that a person can do is they can say, hey, I love this episode. Could you do an episode on XYZ at some point? I hear it. I can actually use that as a bit in one of the podcasts. And, if I like what the person said, I can put it on there. If I don't have to, put it into the broadcast. But another good thing about Anchor, just to bring that up. And if you, you happen to listen to the podcast, you think you've got a question, or you would like additional information, or you've got a topic you'd like for me to cover, that's the perfect way to go about doing it. Just leave me a message.
Perfect. There's so many things here that you're implementing. You're building a nice little platform for yourself, and it's a platform that has a bit of a broader reach, I think, than some of the podcasts out there, and that includes MacVoices. I mean, I try to keep this fairly wide, but still with an Apple focus. And you're just rejecting that part, which is great because, then it opens up to so many things, like you said, that you're interested in, but you're still flying under the tech banner, which is going to appeal to a lot of the folks that are listening and watching this, and still suit you very much. So I don't think we're going to see, a recipe for blueberry cupcakes.
You never know. No, I doubt it. The one thing that, like I said, it kind of clicked one day because I've been following Jim Dalrymple's Loop Insight, followed the Loop for eons. And I like what he and Dave Mark and Sean King have been able to do over the years. Sean has tremendous, variety of interests that are completely outside of the world of Apple. And if you take a look at Jim himself, he loves talking about music and guitars. So a lot of times you'll be out there and here's something about this one specific model of guitar that, just sold in an auction for $250,000. Or here's something, about photography from Sean. And, I looked at that and I said, this is why I go to that site all the time. I love the fact that they just kind of bounce off of these. They've got a focus, but they bounce off a lot of those. Once again, if this really takes off, and I don't care if it does or not, but, because I'm just doing it for fun. But if Tangible Tech really takes off, I'm definitely going to have the crew from Loop Insight on there at some point and just say, you were my inspiration.
You could do worse. Especially with Jim. Jim kind of took the whole concept of a blog and twisted it to his liking. And to your point, it's not always on topic. But then again, Loop Insight is nebulous enough that it could be any topic and it would fit. Yeah. So it's a reflection of the author. And I think we all do that. Whether you're a blogger or a podcaster or whatever, your show is, because it's not a news show. It's, we don't have to have the journalistic guidelines that maybe some other media properties do. We can kind of make it what we want it to be. And this clearly is something that you've done just that. So.
Well, and that's when, once again, talking about people who kind of defined podcasting, you being that example. I love the fact that you are able to produce so much quality content, and you've been doing it for years. And it always ceases, or never ceases to amaze me just how, good you do week after week after week. And keep it up. 30 years from now when I'm, I'll be really old. I'm hoping, you and I are still talking, and, maybe at that point we'll have a podcast about, geriatrics or something.
Speak for yourself, man. Geriatrics.
Well, yeah. Well, you'll be only 49 at that point, won't you?
47.
Another 47.
47.
You're 17 right now. Huh?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's getting deep around here. But we, hopefully years and years from now, we'll be able to continue doing this. And, I know you'll be using the latest 3-dimensional video.
We'll see. We'll see. As long as it's reliable. That's the big thing that, no, we're not going to go there because we're about to go down a rabbit hole that is very deep and very ugly.
And one of these days, by the way, I still want to see if we can do a VR episode of MacVoices. I'll work with you on that.
All right, that sounds good.
It may be next year, but we'll do this.
I like it. So, Tangible Tech can be found pretty much anywhere as far as the podcast goes. The website specifically is
tangibletech.net.
It's okay. It's a .net. So
some blankety blank already had .com out there. So I looked at tangible.tech. Somebody had that, and I went in and I said, .net is not a bad thing.
No,
we're on the net.
Yeah, there you go. That's how you remember. So tangible. Tangible Tech. Tangibletech.net. It's tongue twister.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, and available on the Anchor platform, but it's also available to any podcatcher that you prefer out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely any. And like I said, they surprised me the other day because they do all the distribution. And I saw yet another listing down there, and it said, podcast will be on here, as soon as we get it out there. And it just absolutely shocked me. So it'll be on 12 platforms here pretty quickly. I
have to look into that.
Well, like we said, it has its good
point.
Points. There are bad points.
Yeah. So have you created social media presences for Tangible Tech?
Yeah, on Twitter, it is tech_tangible. Hey, somebody else already had it's so hard anymore, But tech_tangible for Twitter. And on Facebook, just look for Tangible Tech. And I got to warn you on that one. The site is, or the page is just really, really basic right now, but it'll look nice someday.
Well, sure. Well, listen, you're only what, as we record this, you're 5 episodes in. Is that correct? So, everything is a work in progress through at least the first 20 episodes. That's just the way it is. Because
Exactly.
I mean, it used to be you start up a podcast and that's pretty much all you did. Now you've got the Facebook presence and you've got the Twitter presence and you've got to have the website. And, some push to Instagram, some push into Google Plus. You can just go on and on with trying to find your audience. So it takes time.
Yeah, it gets, and, fortunately, a lot of this, having worked on Apple World today and, building some of the presences, like you said, getting out into things like Twitter and Facebook and you name it out there, or you kind of get a picture for what works, what doesn't. So there were some things that I just jumped on immediately and said, got to have the Twitter. Got to have the Twitter. Yeah. Even though I don't use Twitter personally very, very much anymore for the sites, it is very important to get that presence out there.
Yeah. Everybody has their favorite social network or networks. And that means if you want to be there, you got to go where the audience is.
Exactly.
That's it. Steve, it's great to see you. We will not have as much time lapse between shows when having you on, or maybe I can come over and visit you on yours, but we definitely need to do this more often.
That sounds absolutely great. And I'm going to be on a long, long trip. We won't talk about that, but I'll be on a long, long trip. Still updating Tangible Tech and trying at one point during the trip, my cohort, Dennis Sellers, is going to actually be on vacation in Colorado, of all places. And
good planning,
fortunately,
Steve.
I think he's scheduling his trip so that he's going to be here when I'm actually crossing the Atlantic, and will be bored to tears because we're not going to any ports or anything. So I'll be able to, keep up the good work on the website while he's gone.
I want to be clear on that one too. You're crossing the Atlantic, but you're not going to any ports, or just at that particular moment?
No, just at that. We've got like 5 days at the end where we're cruising between Madeira, which is a group of islands, Portuguese, I think. But anyway, between there and Bermuda. So that's ending up a long, 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 long trip.
Okay. For a minute,
lots of stuff.
For a minute, it just sounded like you were going to go out in the ocean, sail around a little while and come back, which didn't make didn't make a lot of sense.
Well, I just, and someday, in fact, that's probably going to be a topic I'm going to cover is cruise ship internet and how it has gone from bad to worse to better.
Okay. Well, that's
and
great.
How they do it is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, you're going to be doing research then.
Oh yeah,
right.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, that's the
tons of research.
Tons, days and days of research.
Hours and minutes. No, it'll. I have done a lot of research on that. I actually wrote some stuff for OWC on satellite internet. And it was fascinating to find out what's out there. I just found out that this SpaceX launch last week, which has Telstar 7 or something like that, this one massive satellite, absolutely huge communication satellite. One of the things that they're looking at is not only internet for people flying, but on cruise ships to improve the speed again. So keeps getting better.
In case you missed it, I was trying to help you right off the trip, Steve. Days and days of research. Yeah.
Days and days.
Yes.
The last 5 days of the trip.
Yeah. Okay. The things you will go and do for your audience is just really impressive.
Somebody has to do it, and it may as well be me.
Safe travels. It's great to see you. I miss this.
Thanks, Chuck.
I miss this.
As usual, this was a blast, and I told him he could take my green screen and actually add anything he wants in post-production, and turn this into like a beach with a couple palm trees back there or something.
Yeah, I have ideas, folks. I'm not sure I'll be able to pull them off, but I have ideas. So
yeah, you said something about burning pits of fire or something like that.
Yeah, but I've since had a better idea. So we'll see if
Oh no!
see if I have the guts to pull it off.
Steve, if he does that, I'm going to be impressed.
Steve, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, everybody, and thanks again, Chuck. It was great talking with you.
Always is. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. As much as I admire what Steve's doing, we're going to stick with the Apple world because that's the world we know and love, but we may delve outside just a little bit. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.